what they showed isn't actually the current state of the game, and I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Therefore, I am stepping away. Yo, Asmon, hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, well, yeah, I was having fun. I was playing Dark Souls, and then suddenly I wasn't playing Dark Souls.
Which Dark Souls are you playing?
Witcher 1. I've never played Dark Souls before in my entire life.
Oh my god.
It's the first.
Well, you know.
Do you know what? Hey, I two-shot Smaug and that guy. I two-shot him.
I'm gonna be honest. That is impressive. Smaug and Ornstein. Yeah, in Orlando.
Yeah,
that is
Ornstein,
impressive.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It was pretty good. Yeah, I was surprised.
So you're liking the game?
Molding. Yeah, the game's actually insane, and I'm really looking forward to. Obviously, I'm going to make a video about it and stuff like that because of this whole situation. You know, my goal is to distance myself with Ashes because of the whole situation.
So how'd this start? Because it seems like I'm sure you probably did. You see my reaction to your video and everything?
No, I didn't get around to it yet.
Okay.
But I got the TLDR. Apparently,
sure.
So apparently, you obviously I'm paraphrasing, and I've got it from a bunch of Twitch chat aroundies. You were like disagreeing with the video, but then apparently your comment section was actually agreeing with me. In the video.
A lot of people actually agreed with you in the comment section. A lot of the chatters did, and commenters.
So the thing is, if anyone who's actually played the game. Like knows the truth, right? Because they've been to the desert, they know the state of the desert.
Well, how do you reconcile that with people like Pirate Software who have played the game a lot, who show that that's not the case?
I'm gonna be honest. I have no idea what's going through Pirate's head.
Okay.
Because I don't know what he sees in the video game. I'll say to him though, he really likes the video game. And it's likely because he thinks the video game's going to be like EVE Online. I don't really think the game's going to be like EVE Online.
Okay.
I think it's trying to be more like Lineage or Arcade, not EVE. So
well, I know Steven played a lot of Lineage before this and Arcade as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Pirate's his perception of the video game, I feel like is Pirate wants it to be one thing, which I just don't think it is, and it's never tried to be that. But then there's this other group who want it to be like classic WoW. Then there's the group who want it to be like Lineage. So there's like factions within the game's community who want it to be in different ways.
I think that's a huge problem for like every MMO, because like every MMO is going to have like a faction of people that want it to be a hardcore PvP, or they want it to be a theme park, or they want it to be an MMO, or they want it to have roguelike features or something. But it's impossible to manage all of those expectations. Sure. Yeah. But like, I mean, I think Pirate Software looked at, for example, like the desert, and I think that was really the main point of contention that a lot of people are bringing up. Is that so the desert's currently in two sections.
There is an old section of the desert, the thing that you've got on your stream at the moment, the current state. This section of the desert that looks quote unquote complete. This isn't complete. This is just a bare bones empty area that's had trees placed around it. The grass, you can even see the grass in this screenshot right now, is not rendering correctly because the grass doesn't render correctly in this area. This is an unfinished area. It's got 0 points of interest. It's got 0 dungeons. All it's got is random mobs and random trees placed all around it. I made a whole video going this segment of the desert in phase 1. I flew around this and I made a bet with Steven and said, you know what, if the desert exists, I'll cut my beard off. And guess what? I flew around this section and I was like, yeah, do you know what? The desert exists. I'll shave my beard off.
Oh, that's a lot.
And I fucking looked like a thumb. I looked like a thumb for, what was it, 2-3 weeks?
So then what changed?
So what changed was when phase 2 launched, they advertised phase 2 with a $110 price tag, having an expansion to the desert. So that, and I stated this explicitly in the video, it's all about the expansion. The expansion to the desert is what I showed. Did you say that in the video?
I don't remember you saying that, because like, so, and this is the impression that I got. Well, you can see like, so like when I watched the video that you did, the impression that I got from the video is that you were showing the desert and there was like nothing in the desert at all. Like all of the images that you showed you, and it looks like if you look at your mini map, you're basically on the edge of the map, And
well, if you bring up my stream right now, if you can.
Sure.
Where I am currently is smack bang right in the middle of the desert. There is a node directly in front of me. This little crop of land is a node, right?
Yeah.
Ignore the crop of land. I don't care about the crop of land because that's just a node. The point is, all around it, it's just emptiness everywhere. There is no desert. This isn't a desert expansion. This is just sand.
But you can see, so I think that's a good point you're bringing up, and you're saying that the desert expansion doesn't exist, but the desert does exist.
The desert exists in the fact that they have just created a land mass with nothing in it. There is no content in this desert. There is nothing to test in this desert.
But your video implied that the things that were advertised in the demo from 2 years ago were not present in the alpha. Is that correct?
Yep.
Is that true?
Yep. And I would say, yeah, I would stand by that. That's true. These things do not exist.
So if I look at it and I see the things that were shown in alpha in like this demo from 2 years ago, and then I look at the video that Steven's showing right now of the desert, I feel like these two things are pretty congruent. Like,
right. What things would you say that exist from both those trailer from 2 years ago and and what Steven's showing? What would you say exists, quote unquote, exists? Is it the trees?
Yeah, the developed landscape that they showed in the trailer.
Okay.
And also, and you're contrasting that because you making the comparison in your video, that the comparison is actually it's this empty desert, because that's what you're comparing it with. But if you look at the video itself and you see inside of the game, it does seem like that's what the game looks like.
I agree that the rocks exist. The rocks exist and the trees exist.
But do you see how if you do that and then you show this image of a completely like unfinished area, it's going to give people the impression that the entire desert is also unfinished?
Well, you've got to use the context that you've got to acknowledge the context that I've already made a 20-minute video showing off this section of the desert that Steven's currently showing off.
So that
I've already done this.
Okay, that's fine. So what you're saying is that inside of this video, though, that context doesn't exist. Because like if there's a previous video where you've explained it, so then you can see why people would be confused, right?
Yeah, I would assume that I don't reach a very wide audience, right? My audience has been the same 10,000 people for, again, 3 fucking years covering this game.
Yeah.
So when I make videos, I always assume that people have seen the previous videos. So it's like when I release a thing, I reference the things that I said in the last video because it's always a continuation of when I'm covering the video game. So anyone who's interested in Ashes of Creation have already seen that previous desert expansion video, because I don't really reach an audience outside of my own 10 to 20k people.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. That's fine if you want to do that. But I think when you do have a video that does get popular, right? I mean, and I'm sure you would have expected this one to get popular.
Is it popular? I've not checked. I
mean, it's got 130,000 views. That's really good. I mean, it popped off. Yeah.
I'm gonna put some fucking ads on that one.
Yeah, me too. And so the point is like, so if I just watched that video, which is what I did, and I think also the odds are that every single person watching the videos is not. Because and this is another way to look at it, right? Is that if a lot of people are angry about it and they're perceiving the desert to be incomplete, that would also imply that they also did not see the other videos either. Because if they had seen the other videos as well, like you said, then they wouldn't be making these comments because they would know that it was contextualized.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what all I'm trying to do is make a video explaining why I am no longer in support of this video game, right? Okay. I don't support the video game anymore because what they showed 2 years ago, this doesn't exist. This desert, this doesn't exist, right? Looking at my stream, I'm showing you this. This shit doesn't exist. what is this? Is this even an asset that exists? None of this is, right? But when they showed it 2 years ago for a $250 price tag based on this, the current state of the game, you saw these reactions, didn't you? You
I
were
did.
there
I
for
watched
that.
it. Yes.
You were very excited. Did you have any impression that this wasn't the current state of the video game?
Yeah.
Yeah. You looked at this and thought, well, this is this is what they got, right? This is what they're showing us.
Yes and no. So like I've gone through a lot of betas and demos for games before, and I know that like, for example, like there are many games that have cut content or they don't fully show the game whenever it's ready. And I think also there are cases where like big components of a game are not being added in until like later on in the future. So I think if a game is in an alpha state, like every single image that you see inside, I think this is what your impression is, right? Is that every single image that you saw on these previews, you expected to be in the alpha.
Well, yeah, they showed this saying, this is the desert. There's many. If you go back and just watch that whole live stream, there is no context in that live stream that what they showed, this whole thing is just a concept. This is just the assets. They never once did they say that. They implied, they made it look like that this is the current state of the desert. It's not the current state of the desert. The desert probably didn't even exist at this point because the desert doesn't exist now. There is no desert.
Well, there is though, right? Because like if you look at the image that like they showed, and if you look at it, you can see that there is a desert that's very expanded on. I think that you bring up a good point that like this image and this specific case with like this tower is not there.
Oh no, not just that specific. I would say everything in this trailer doesn't exist. Everything. And you'll be hard pressed to find it.
Okay, well, why don't you just pick a random spot?
The scorpion?
This one.
So that's not in there.
No.
Okay, go to another one. So and by the way, this is just a random. I mean, you realize that's literally one asset that's placed on a mountain, right?
Yeah. But they've sold the game based on this is the current state of the desert. We've got these dunes. We've got this, what do you call this, like a Badlands area. Mm-hmm. None of it's actually there. These trees, when they sold the desert expansion, they said that we could cut the trees down. You can't actually cut the trees down. The trees don't exist. You run through them. They're not real assets.
Okay.
They're assets in the fact that they're there, like you can see them, but you can't interact with them. There is no interaction with anything in the desert. The mobs are just randomly placed, seemingly. There's no points of interest. So the Riverlands is full of these points of interest. There's about 18 or so, 20 points of interest. They're pretty, they're pretty fleshed out, pretty good, especially the Tower Coffin. Tower Coffin looks great. But the desert is missing all of that. It's missing all of that, right? This is what the quote unquote expansion to the desert is. This.
So what do you like, how do you define, because like I think this has been a big problem with the Ashes of Creation like development, and it's it's
holy
wait, what?
You're not wrong. The whole thing where what's what.
Well, what is it like? Yeah, like how do you define an alpha? Because like I've played through a lot of alphas in games, and like some alphas are very different than others. Some of them will have like the entire game available, and there'll be huge swaths of just totally unfinished content, and other people will only have an alpha where it's a small slice of the gameplay, but it's finished inside of that little small area. And so like how do you define alpha? Yeah.
So Ashes is obviously not a marketing alpha. However, they have marketed the current progress of the game falsely. Another really, really good example is the Freehold live stream. Did you watch that one where they showed off?
I did, and you're talking about the rabbit mount where they're
the only two live streams out of the many.
So the Freeholds, they're not real either. They've just been implemented into the game. There is no
pigs. Thank you so much for the raid,
there is none of this.
Thank you.
And when you say there is none, what you mean is that the alpha doesn't have any in them, any of that system right now. That's correct?
Yeah. So currently, in the alpha, what the freehold is, it's just a static asset with a fence and a house that's randomized seemingly. I'm not quite sure how I think it's just a randomly generated house.
Yeah.
Then you walk up to it and then you purchase it for 20 gold or 50 gold, and then it's supposed to have the ability to plant trees, but so I received a bunch of reports.
So like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, so do you think they're not going to finish it, or like, because I feel like that's like a textbook example of something that they clearly this is the rudimentary version of it, and they're going to put more of it into the game, right?
But what people are discontent about is the fact that they showed it 2 years ago in a complete state and in a seemingly fully functional state, and now we pledged $250 based off the idea that it was in that state, just to find out that 2 years later, remember this is a 2-year context, right? 2 years. So you'd think they'll be much farther along than what they showed in 2 years, and we spent hundreds of dollars to support it, but now it's seemingly only just being rolled out.
Narc hasn't spent a single dime.
I think that's what a lot of my community are discontent about, and it's why I don't really feel like, what I feel like, Asmon, is I feel like I've lied to people for 4 years based on what Steven said, and I feel really guilty that I've lied to hundreds of thousands of people because I thought what was being shown and what was being said was real, and it's not.
Well, it's not in the alpha right now. I mean,
no,
like,
it's not in the alpha right now,
right.
But it's seemingly not even being developed, or it seemingly doesn't even exist. The story arcs is another really something I was super excited for.
I mean, do you really think they're not developing the freehold? I mean, we have to assume that they obviously.
Oh yeah, they'll roll out the freeholds. Yeah. I'm not saying that they're not going to. I don't think I've ever said that they're not going to develop it. What I'm saying is I don't agree with how they've sold $250 packs of the things that making it seem like it exists when it doesn't exist. I don't agree with that. Therefore, I decided, do you know what? Ethically, I can't continue doing this. I can't continue because I feel like I'm lying.
Ethically?
I don't want to lie.
Oh my God.
So do you think if the alpha was free, how would you think that would change your perception of the game?
How would it change me? I mean, if it was free, nothing would matter, right? If it was free, then thumbs up. I'll be pogging out if it was free.
Okay, so you're primarily upset about the price of the alpha, and you feel like that the alpha for the price of it isn't giving you what you thought that you spent your money for.
That's not it.
Is that pretty much it?
What's happened? Yeah. I feel, just for context as well, is that I didn't actually pay any money. Someone I used to know actually donated me a key back in Alpha 1. So I've got context all the way back in Alpha 1, right? I know the full development. I know all of it, right? What I'm saying is when I say I spent $250, I'm speaking for my community. So I spent $250. Yeah, based on what was shown. So many people have approached me and just said to themselves, I backed during this showcase because I looked at this showcase and I thought, holy shit, they are so far along. I'm going to help support them, $250, just for them to log into an alpha that is, this.
Okay. So do you think they're going to finish the game? Like, I mean, so because you said at one point that it was like fakery, and then at another point you said that it was not a scam. So like, where do you think the game is going to go?
So I think they're falsely advertising the current state of the game. Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, they've been falsely advertising the current state of the game to make funding, to help fund their game. So what I said in the quote that I used was, "This isn't open development; it's funding at any cost." So that's what I feel like they're doing. They're trying to fund. Steven's trying to fund the game at any cost, even if they have to lie and show fake things that aren't real at the time. It's just a concept that's going to eventually exist. If we'd known that, if I had known that, if you had known that, would you still have the same perception of the video game from 2 years ago?
Do you want my
know.
honest answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. I've seen how a lot of games have been developed over the years, and I think this is very common. So, like, one thing, so I'll give you an example. Well, let me. This is an abstract example. I'll explain it. So, in Warlords of Draenor in WoW, the flying was never actually implied for what the Draenor continent was meant to be. And so, in the process of flying not being implied and flying not be planned for, Blizzard had a massive, huge problem that caused server-wide issues when they had to implement flying later on in a later patch. And what I understand is that the interconnectivity of different systems causes a bunch of problems that exist inside of an ecosystem of other systems. So when somebody shows me a system inside of like its own ecosystem, like for example the Freehold, and I see that just by itself, I'm viewing that as like, this is what the finished product is supposed to look like. And I wouldn't necessarily expect to see that in the game immediately, because maybe that isn't contextualized and developed around all of the other systems it's supposed to fit into. It's like kind of you're showing like a finished piece of a jigsaw puzzle, but you need to make sure that all of the other pieces around it also are finished in order for the pieces to fit together. So whenever I see a system like that that's not finished, and then the alpha, and I think that your perception of being disappointed that these things are not available, I think that's a totally fair perception to have, because as a viewer and a fan, you are hoping to see that in the game, and I think that a reasonable person could be disappointed in that. I do think, however, that it does make sense inside of game development. And like, have you ever done coding before?
No.
Okay. Well,
No.
I've barely done coding. And one thing that I've learned about coding is that you can get one wrench in the system, one, bracket is left and not right, and then the entire system falls apart. You make one change and then the computer doesn't work, or, the program doesn't boot up. So when I see systems that are evolving, like kind of in real time that they're showing, they're probably going to show. Go ahead.
Let me interrupt. Okay, let me interrupt.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Blizzard, right? We're talking about Blizzard. And like them showing Warlords of Draenor.
Well, no. So I was creating an example of something that. So the idea, the argument that I was trying to make was that when you implement a system into a game, that system has to seamlessly integrate into all of the other systems into the game. So a lot of times when alphas or betas for something like Warlords of Draenor comes out, let's say every single system that was going to be in the game is not currently in the game. Like, for example, the Legion system.
Okay, let's focus on that then.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
I don't think, this is what I'm saying, I don't think Intrepid were open about the fact that what they showed was not the current state of the video game. They in fact did the very opposite and said that this is the current state of the video game. In that very live stream, I can bring a context, in that very live stream, we had the devs talking about the fact that how there's this dungeon that exists in the desert, and it's this underground dungeon with snake people in it, and they showed those snake people models. They showed those models, and they said there's this underground dungeon, it's full of lava, it's been crystallized. This was 2 years ago. So if they're talking about it in that detail, then it exists.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist, but it's 2 years later, and now that doesn't exist. So what happened to that underground lava dungeon that they were going on about? They were saying things, and here's how it comes across to my audience, or the audience that, I like to think that my audience are actually the audience who jumped onto the video game when you and Lazy Peon made your videos at the very beginning.
There's been a lot of people that have been really excited for the game. I mean, for a whole, probably like almost half a decade at this point. I think about it. Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. So I like to think that people, that my audience, the people who I talk to, are those people. The people who come from you, the people who come from Peon, the people who have been watching the video game quite extensively for 4 years.
Yeah.
So when Intrepid show and talk about how they've got these tools that are going to develop the game extremely fast, and they spend an hour live stream saying how we're going to develop this world so quickly, and we've got all these next generation cutting edge tools that's gonna, the game's gonna be developed insanely fast. We've got all these biomes. Stephen makes quotes like, we've got cross sections of the desert, we've got cross sections of the forest areas, the riverlands, we've got the tabletop mountains, the badlands, we've got the volcano areas, and they're showing all of this stuff, but none of that actually exists. And now we're in a situation where we signed up to do a test, to test a video game that is
in development
so far from what they advertised that we're not even sure what we're testing anymore. We were fully prepared and understood fully that this was a true development alpha.
Good point.
Were probably the most understanding. We knew this. That's what we signed up for.
Right.
But we didn't sign up for a desert that is not existing. We didn't sign up for a freehold system.
It's incomplete, exist. Right? The desert is incomplete. It does exist. It's just there are areas of it that are unfinished.
Let's talk about percentage. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Incomplete. Let's talk about percentage of completion.
There's going to be an ad on Twitch, guys.
Well,
in about
before
seconds.
I get into that,
just
I'll let you get into it.
Sorry for that, but
have you ever built a computer before?
I snoozed it 3 times already.
Yeah.
Okay.
I built this one.
Yeah, well, there you go, right? And so I think that a lot of the problems that a lot of people are bringing up are, like, I remember whenever, for example, like, I needed to get more RAM for my computer. And so when I got more RAM for my computer, I went and I got this RAM, and then I realized that it wouldn't fit inside of the motherboard, and then I had to get a new motherboard. But then when I got a new motherboard, I realized that I now needed a new power
thank you so much for the follow, man.
And I think that the way that you need to make sure that, like, computer components fit together inside of a PC and all of that fits inside of the case is kind of similar to the way that games work. And so if you have a game that comes out and all of those features aren't readily available in the alpha, I don't think that it's really fair to say that they don't necessarily exist, because they might not be implemented into the alpha, because if you want to use the metaphor, maybe the motherboard isn't exactly what it needs to be in order for that thing to go into the alpha. And I think that's the way that it works.
Right. I understand that. Yeah, I get it, right? It's an actively developed game.
Yes.
When they add things are going to break.
Yes.
But again, I don't think that's got anything to do with advertising a game as one thing, and it's not actually that one thing.
So you think that you were falsely advertised to because of the freehold system not being what it was inside of, like, let's say the demo?
Okay, yeah. So okay, yeah. Let's go with that angle. So the freehold system doesn't exist. The weather systems that were shown don't exist. Granted, the seasons do, right? That's actually really good, and I'm really impressed with that they did the seasons. The seasons exist, but the weather doesn't. The story arc systems, the main thing that delivers content to players, they showed it in a state that triggered quests on your screen. They showed it so the world was changing dynamically in real time. That's what we thought that they currently had, because they showed it, and that's what they advertised. The server meshing technology, that doesn't exist. There's no server meshing. There's no dynamic gridding. Sorry, there is server meshing. Let me correct myself. There is server meshing. There is no dynamic gridding. So they've advertised this whole thing that this dynamic gridding exists. Personally, I think that's Star Citizen copium, and there is no such thing as dynamic gridding. There is no such thing as dynamic server meshing. I just don't believe in that shit.
Why?
That feels like copium. Well, because it's technology that just feels like it's buzzwords that are trying to do something that's literally impossible. A dynamically shrinking and growing server. Show me it working. Show me it first. Stop advertising that it's going to exist.
Didn't they do that? It doesn't. Because the Star Citizen, they showed it with, like, throwing the ball back and forth.
Well, the people that they've shown that, but it's not actually in the video game yet. Okay. It was a concept.
It is now.
It was just a concept.
In Star Citizen.
Sure, it exists in concept, but it's not in the game yet.
Do you think it will ever be in the game?
Dynamic gridding and dynamic server meshing? No, I don't think that's ever going to exist. Okay. I don't know about that one. I don't believe in that one. I don't know about that one.
People are saying it is in the game. Yeah, of course I think it's going to happen.
It is. They just
really?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like you have all.
I'm not even in the community, and I know
that are evolving.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, I think so. I really do.
Yeah.
If you look at think about it. We grew up playing Super Mario World, playing Super Mario 64, and now we're playing games like Elden Ring. Do you really think that it's going to stop? Do you think it's going to just stop getting better? Of course it's going to keep getting better.
Here's the thing specifically about dynamic server meshing. I just don't think that's real. I don't think that's ever going to exist. I think it's just an impossible technology that is just impossible.
Okay.
I'm well open to it being made, and I'm like, yo, if it ever gets made, wow. But until it gets made, I'm like, I'm not going to buy that shit. And it's the same thing for dynamic gridding.
You didn't buy it.
It's basically the same thing, just done in a different way. Until it's shown, I don't believe in it. So currently, it still doesn't exist. Dynamic gridding doesn't exist. So that's 5 things that they've shown in live streams that they sold $250 packs off of that don't actually exist in the video game. So how many times do you have to be screwed? How many times do they have to lie? And, well, let's not use the word lie. Let's use misrepresent. How many times do they have to misrepresent the current status of their development before we get pissed off as consumers?
Is that question? Okay, so
yeah. How many times are you willing to be we play fucking World of Warcraft. We're still getting screwed.
For me, my perspective is that I don't really look at it that way. If I see a game and it's not in the state that I want it to be, and this is the outlook that I have on WoW now, is that if WoW isn't the game that I want it to be at the current point, I just simply stop playing the game until it is.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
And that's what you said you're going to do.
Yeah, so you used to. Yeah, you used to not be like that, right? You used to really care about World of Warcraft, and you'd play it, and
it was unhealthy. It was very
unhealthy. It is unhealthy. So what I've done is I've looked at the state of the video game, and I thought to myself, do you know what? It's unhealthy for me, and it's not what I want to do, right? I don't know if you saw those clips at the end of that video. It was like me dressed up in some stupid costumes and shit.
Yeah,
I want to make videos where I can express myself creatively. You used to watch my videos. You see my intros.
Yeah, no, I know.
I love that shit. I fucking love that shit, man. And I felt like for the last 2 years, I've been covering Ashes of Creation, and I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought the game was. I've basically lied to a huge amount of audience because Okay, let's not use the word lie. I've misrepresented the game to a huge audience, and I feel extreme amounts of guilt from that. So I want to distance myself from the game and try and pursue something that I genuinely care about, which is just making entertaining videos. And unfortunately, in the format of Ashes, I just don't think I can do it because there ain't nothing here.
I think at a certain point, I mean, you're not going to be able to do that anyway with any MMO. I mean, I feel like that's always the case.
MMO?
I mean,
no. I'm not going to talk. No, I'm not going to do MMOs.
Well,
I'm going to.
Well, I'm just saying, in general, I mean, this is like a YouTube content creator thing. I don't really think this has a lot to do with Ashes itself as a game.
No.
This is primarily about the way that you want to take your YouTube channel. And I by the way, I support that, right? I mean, I think you should definitely do what you should play other games, make content about other games, and try to hit those other audiences. And that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
My personal opinion, this is just from my experience doing content myself, is that I think it's better to kind of wean yourself off of that rather than cold turkey it. But you should do what you feel like you should do, right? More than anything else. And so, I don't really think that necessarily. I can definitely see where you're coming from, and I can see why you would be frustrated if you felt like every single development update would have been something that would be available in Alpha 1 or Alpha 2, excuse me. I don't think that was ever really explicitly stated. And I think also the truth is that the alternative to the way that Ashes of Creation is communicating its development is the way that I think Blizzard does its development, which is they basically never communicate with the public at all, and it's very.
You gotta remember that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You gotta remember that. But you gotta remember that Blizzard aren't charging $250 and slapping open development on their game.
I mean.
Are they?
About that. I mean,
Diablo 4?
Yeah, maybe not a great example, but I mean, either way, I think that this entire problem is actually not even about the state of Ashes of Creation. I think it's more about for you.
No, it's not.
And forgive me if I'm overstepping, but I think this is for you. This is about you reaching a kind of a fork in the road with your YouTube and wanting to take your YouTube in a different direction and wanting to divert. Well, I feel like this is not true at all.
Dude, he hit it.
I mean,
right
you did say that at the end of the video.
Dude.
Is it about me? Is it about me?
It doesn't. That doesn't invalidate what you're saying. It's not invalidating.
I think it's more about. I don't think it's about me. I think it's more about the fact that I don't agree with the misrepresentation of the state of the game.
No.
I don't think I don't think I matter. I am nobody. At the end of the day, I'm just a random content creator on YouTube. And in my opinion, I don't think what they've represented is accurate to what they've actually got, and ethically that feels wrong to me. So I can't continue to support something that doesn't ethically line up with my ideals. Does that make sense?
You think Ashes of Creation is unethical because they haven't shown like all of the things that were in these showcases were not in Alpha 2. Is that basically where you're coming from?
Yeah. Okay. So the things that they've shown aren't an accurate representation of the game.
Well, the current state of the game that's playable to the public.
Yeah. So
I mean, this is what happens, right? So like there's probably multiple versions of the game. So what I would assume is there's probably 3 versions of the game. There's the version of the game that we're playing. There's the probably internal testing version of the game, and then there's the dev version of the game.
Right.
And I feel like it probably exists inside of one of these other two. Like there's a friends and family alpha, and that usually a lot of people get friends and family alphas, but like they're like 99% of the time like NDA.
It's funny because that's what I built my whole channel off, right? I built my whole channel off of that exact copium that you've just said. I just don't think that's true. I don't think there is all these different. I don't think there are all these different branches where there's this magical branch of the video game where it's literally finished. I just don't think that's true.
Well,
it's not. I don't think that's true.
You're right.
What the game is.
Well, you're right. It's not finished, but it's in a more finished state. And the problem is that before they want to ship it out to be used by the public, obviously they're going to want to make sure that it's in a place that there are going to be no problems, like different weird things that cause server crashes or anything stupid happening. Like if you play any MMO launch, like you know that there's going to be things that are fucked up on the release. And so
I get that.
Like
I understand that. Like, no. I get. Let me interject. I understand that. I get that. But how much further do you think is along? Do you really think that there's this build that they've got that's this developer branch where they've got all of this stuff here, that's this giant tower, all of these quote unquote assets? Do you really think they've got a build that has this, or do you think that this just doesn't exist and this was just a concept built to sell a $250 pack to help them fund the game in the future when it does eventually exist in X amount of years?
I don't think that it exists in terms of something. Sorry, I'm away from the mic. I don't think that it exists in terms of something that's interconnected inside of the game completely, but I think that they exist in separate instances that are designed to be connected inside of the game because they're made in modular form. So, like, for example, the freehold system probably does exist. The dungeon for the desert probably does exist. Now, does it exist inside of a system that is completely connected with all of this, like, modular, like, for example, like, you have the portal that you can go into? Maybe not. So, if you want to use percentages, I would say that the game is probably 20% finished, something like that. Ooh, on this alpha.
Too generous.
And I think they probably have an internal version that is 40 to 50% finished.
I say 20%.
That's probably what I would guess. Which 40 to 50%, it's still not. It's still theoretically not even halfway there.
I mean, yeah. I mean, chat's saying it right now. I mean, we clearly don't agree on this, so it's an interesting conversation. I completely disagree with everything you just said. I think
I'm giving you a guess of the numbers.
I just want to make something clear, right? I don't hate Ashes of Creation, I got no bad will. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I might not like. I might not like Steven as a person, but I got no bad will against Ashes of Creation or their team or anything. I wish the game the best, right? I want the game to succeed. I just don't agree with the current state of things and how it's been advertised, right? So it's interesting that we have complete opposite opinions about all of this.
Oh no, I don't.
Here's my opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's my thought, right? I think ultimately the game is just going to speak for itself over the next few years.
It will.
I'm just stepping away because I felt like I need to at least tell my audience why I'm stepping away. That's what that video was. It was explaining my frustrations for why I'm stepping away from the game. I'm frustrated because I feel guilty that I've advertised something
that's
that
not the
wasn't
real
true
reason, bro.
for 4 years of my entire life. So I don't want to pursue that anymore. I actually want to go cover other things and do things that I want to do that are in line with my ethics. Most of my successful videos on my channel are not even Ashes of Creation related. So I'm just like, fuck. What am I doing?
Yes, this is live. This is happening right now.
And I think that's a good decision for you to make. And like, if you think that you should step away from the game because you feel like it's reductive or it's holding you back or you're just tired of it or for whatever reason, like, I mean, I think a lot of people do that. I mean, like, you get burned out. Sure, I think that's fine. But I don't think that I don't think that it's that these things don't exist. But I do think that obviously it's going to take time for them to be implemented into the game in a playable state that's made public. Like, these are two very different things.
Because I'm now connected to a much wider audience. I would ask a question to that audience. If you did, or if you watched the coverage of Ashes of Creation 2 years ago, how many of you were under the impression that this is the current state of the game, rather than just a concept that will be in the game in 4 years from now? That would be a question I would ask to the wider audience. Were you aware that what they're showing isn't actually in the game?
It's a preview, like a trailer to a movie.
Would you still back?
Yeah, I mean,
would you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, would you still back the video game? Would you still have spent $250 knowing that all the stuff that they're showing isn't real currently, and it's just a concept? Because I can name a game that did this very similar thing, and it's called Chronicles of Valeria. And you know all about that one.
Oh yeah, I watched a video about it.
God, dude.
It's a concept. Yeah, I mean, so
everything's just a concept.
I can only speak for myself.
That pisses me off.
I think that for me, if I see the way that a game is, I would assume that I would probably be like half and half with like what you're saying. Like, yeah, I could kind of see that, and I could also see like some systems aren't ready on alpha. I feel like in general. And this is like a distinction that I think some people make between like an alpha and a beta, is that an alpha is not feature complete, but a beta is feature complete. So what I mean by that is that things like systems, for example, the freehold system, would not all be available in an alpha, but they would be in a beta. So, and this is something, by the way, a lot of people define alphas and betas differently in gaming, and I feel like it's primarily a marketing ploy more than anything. Yes, 100%. So, yeah, but I think that is definitely a pretty big difference. And so, like, if every single feature in the game was not available in the alpha, I wouldn't immediately be upset about it. I think that, like, as a customer, like, if you spend money on something, every customer is entitled to have whatever opinion they want for something that they spent money on. But from my personal opinion, from, like, playing a lot of games, especially, like, games early in development, no, it really wouldn't surprise me that much.
Right.
And so, I think, obviously, it's like you're making a gesture of good faith.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask you this, right? Because this is something that really rubbed me the wrong way with Pirate. Pirate was saying, Pirate, and he's not saying it maliciously or whatever.
Sure.
All he's doing is repeating what Steven said. Steven thinks that the alpha's going to last at least 1 year, right? How long do you think the Alpha 2 is going to last?
Well, that's a good question. So
I don't agree with that
if they change the name of Alpha 2 to Beta, would that considered be lasting? I mean, because like, so if Alpha 2 lasts for a year and then they change it into Beta, would you say that they lied?
Okay, well, first of all, they're not going to do that, right?
Why?
Because they've stated that the alpha period is going to be much, much, much longer than the beta, right? The beta,
yeah, at least 1 year, yeah, beta, minimum
from
1 year.
Looking at the game, I think the beta when it launches is going to be feature complete.
I think it's going to be way more than 1 year, bro.
And in a state where, it's basically that's the marketing part, right? That's where they start marketing it in beta. So I think the alpha, based on because we've got a lot of people that are obsessed with the video game.
Thank you for following. Thank you.
Pulling it apart for 4 years, and we get a lot of joy out of that. We understand the speed at which Intrepid, at least from our perspective, we understand the speed at which Intrepid works. So what we've done is we kind of extrapolated that and tried to figure out how long it would take them to develop the whole video game, which includes those 18 biomes. And we think it's going to be a minimum of 6 years.
6 years from now.
Yeah, before they go into beta, I think. And that's
before so that's even into beta.
Yeah, so that's assuming that's assuming that they launch with the beta after they have all 18 biomes. So that's just based on how much land mass they've got. So a really good perspective for the audience who do want to continue following the game is to
and how did you math that out?
So it's based on if we assume that it's taken them 4 years, so the start of 2020, when was it? 2021 at the start of 2022.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's been 3 years. If we assume 3 years, that's when the game actually started to be developed. That's the current state of the game. This version of the game, we think, started actually being developed in 2022 at the start. So when they switched to Unreal Engine 5, that was a clean slate for them, and that's a good thing, right? By the way, I think that's very good. I think they should have cleared everything before because the assets were not suitable because they're badly optimized.
It was the right decision to go to Unreal 5. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. I think that was a good decision for them. That's a very controversial thing to say within the community because a lot of people disagree. But I think it was a good decision because it's a step forward.
We disagreed.
And so we think the development started there. So if we assume that that's when they started, and up until the point where they launched, and what they have is about 1/3, maybe 2/3 of one biome, which is the Riverlands. Just for context as well, by the way, the Riverlands isn't actually finished. So another reason why I'm pissed off is the fact that they've started working on the desert when the Riverlands isn't even finished. So it's fuck, why are you doing that? That's really annoying me.
I mean,
anyway.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that, and this is, I think, one of the problems with charging money for an alpha is that the way that a development team is going to prioritize and do things internally might not make sense to a person who's not you're not there might be an internal reason for that. I mean, I don't know why it could make sense. It could not make sense.
So there could be a reason for it. Yeah, let's talk about that. There could
be in the best interest of Intrepid and not testers.
Do you not think that Intrepid, it would benefit Intrepid? So all of this is basically miscommunication is how I would label this whole scenario.
I think that you're right about that.
Miscommunication on their point. Stephen disagrees. He actually thinks the communication's great. I completely disagree with that. I think the communication is actually extremely poor, or it at least could be a lot better to help sell their game in a better light. Anyway, the point is why don't Intrepid communicate that what you just said to us? Why don't they communicate to us that actually here's why? Have you ever played PoE?
Yes.
Have you ever read PoE's patch notes?
Yes.
Do you know that in every single patch notes, the developers give a reason for the change?
Yeah.
That to me is peak communication from a developer team. And when a project is advertised as open development, I would expect that kind of level of communication to its audience, especially when they're slapping $250 on it. I would expect something they're not actually extending anything to us. They're not explaining to us why it's like this.
I think that you're conflating two different things, though, right? You're looking at like a development prioritization list, which is something that's going to be based around development, and PoE making a balancing change of like, whirlwind or cyclone doing more or less damage. I feel like these are two very different things.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm using I'm kind of like straw manning a little bit, but that's fine. What I mean is, why can't they just tell us why the desert is in the current state that it is? Why, when they said that the desert was going to be expanded and we could cut trees, and there was going to be a bunch of resources and get wood and stuff. So basically, to up for the context, you're not actually playing the video game over here, so you're missing context. So a major resource to level up these nodes and progress these nodes is wood. So we need wood in the desert in order to progress these nodes. There is no wood in the desert because the trees aren't real. So they sold the expansion of the desert having trees that were cuttable, that was going to have a bunch of land mass and a bunch added, but none of that was added. So from my perspective as a customer, as a consumer, I think to myself, holy shit, they're finally expanding the desert. They're finally giving us things to do in the desert. Because 2 years ago, they showed us basically a complete desert. It's complete. It's a complete desert. They showed us a complete desert. I had the impression, and so did a lot of my audience. I would say nearly 100% of my audience were expecting a desert expansion. There is no desert expansion. It's just sand. That you can generate in Unreal Engine 5 by pressing generate sand, and that's it. So what are we expected to test here? What's the test here? What's the point of the phase 2? Why did you sell a phase 2 for $110 when phase 2 is basically the same as phase 1 and nothing's changed and you just wiped everyone back to level 0? What are we testing this time? Why are we spending 50 hours grinding? We've already done that bit. There's nothing new for us to test. So is this how phase 3 is going to go? What about phase 3? What about phase 3.5? What about phase 3.6? How is this game even being developed? We have no idea because there's zero communication. And I was hoping at least, I've tried to talk so many times about the lack of communication at Intrepid. I've made like 6 videos. I think you even reacted to one, maybe? I can't remember. And you disagreed with me in that video as well.
Which one?
But it was like...
Thank you for the follow.
It was the one where I just spoke about the lack of communication at Intrepid, right? Let me see if I can find the thumbnail. But it was basically a TLDR of the video was the communication is leaving a lot of the audience... confused about the current state of the video game.
That's the video that Narc got completely disliked on.
Oh, here it is. The community are losing trust in Ashes of Creation because a lot of people approach me. I am the, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to be as humble as possible. I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I am like the point where people come to get a understanding of the current video game. So a lot of people were coming to me and saying, what the fuck's happening? What's going on with this? Why is it doing this? Why are they doing this? I'm losing trust, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, well, how can I approach this? How can I address this situation? So I addressed the situation by making this video and saying, listen, Intrepid Studios, the communication is really, really falling to pieces, and we don't know what's going on. Please, can you maybe increase the communication a little bit so we understand what's going on and why you're making these choices and why it's been delayed or why it's been changed. So now, originally we thought the Alpha 2 was just going to launch as an Alpha 2, but they changed it to phases. And a lot of people were really confused about this phase thing. And then they added a bunch of prices to the phases, and it's kind of a bit like scratching their heads, like, what the fuck?
I feel like a lot of this is based off of the fact that it's paid. Like, I feel like that, like, because if this game was free, I don't think that we'd even be having this conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
So like, this is entirely, well, like, I think that matters though, right? So like, if the development process is fundamentally problematic or bad for whatever reason, then that's very different than you saying that the development process is frustrating as a paying customer. So like, you're kind of comparing and like arguing about two separate things. That's what I would really say the most about it would be.
Yeah. Well, I am just expressing like random concerns now. Sticking to the point of the video, the point of the video is that what they showed isn't actually the current state of the game, and I don't agree with that. Okay. Therefore, I am stepping away. That's all the video is.
Narc did not buy the game.
And then I showed comparisons. They advertised this. This is what we got. I've received a lot of pushback in the comments about how what I showed isn't actually representative of what the desert actually is, and you said that as well. But the part of the desert that is being shown has no content. There are no points of interest in that desert. It's
dude,
easy
the backtracking
to just
is wild,
generate
dude.
a desert area.
Well, then why didn't you show that part?
Because I've already made a 20-minute video about it. That part already exists on my channel for everyone to see.
But
I've already covered that. That was phase 1.
You could see how somebody who watched this video would think that this is the desert, right?
Well, yeah, but the point is that this was the expansion. So we're talking about the desert expansion. That's not what
you said in the video.
No, that's not what you said, dude.
Like, you didn't say it was the expansion. You said it was the desert.
I had a section in that video that explicitly spoke about the expansion.
I think that you probably did at some point, but you also said that it was the desert itself. Like, I can maybe, I mean, I can compromise and say, like, maybe you said both, but I remember you saying that it was the desert.
There's a whole section in this video where he talks about.
Okay.
Sorry, Chrome was acting
weird. If people can find timestamp, I can watch it. And
I'm looking at it right now.
Where's the timestamp? And I can listen to it right now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Chrome was acting weird, so I put Firefox.
Okay, let's go back to 5 minutes and I don't know, 18.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna play it.
25.
25. Okay.
525.
All right, I'll listen to it.
Main reasons to wipe the servers, yet the vassal system or level 4 nodes weren't even introduced this phase. And now they even claim that they're not going to wipe at all. They are instead just going to introduce new servers. So what's going to happen to those old servers? They claimed prior to phase 2's launch that at the launch of this phase, Desert was going to receive an expansion.
I am just going to be talking about what's going to land on December 20th. We're going to go through what systems are going to land. Come December 20th, let's talk a little bit about what we have coming up for December 20th, right? The desert as well. The desert is probably going to receive a little bit more love than the tropics will, given that its assets are obviously a bit more developed than the tropics location.
This prompted people to finally expect some remnants of the desert showcase that was shown in 2022. Yet what we received... That's pretty much it.
Okay. So... But like, you see how that's confusing for me to see, because you're talking about like the desert and then you're showing the images that are in the game. So you're seeing the expansion and you said it prompted people to believe what's going to be seen 2 years ago, and then you're showing that.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was pretty, I'm gonna be honest, I thought I was pretty clear. I thought that clip there is pretty clearly stating that this is the desert expansion, and there is no desert expansion. The desert expansion is a flat piece of sand with 3 nodes that are copy-pasted nodes from the Riverlands, and that's all it is. That's the expansion. So they sold the launch of Phase 2 with a $110 price tag based on lies, basically. Because there is no expansion. You can't claim that is an expansion. I mean, do you believe what I'm showing is an expansion there?
Well, no. I mean, obviously not. I mean, it is in a way, right? It technically is an expansion, but no, not really.
Yes.
Okay.
Technically, yes, and I agree. Technically, it is.
But it's not.
Would you then agree? So would you say that that's a communication issue? What I'm trying to express is communication issues. Improve the communication. That's what I want Intrepid to do. I care a lot about Intrepid. I care a lot about Ashes of Creation. I want them to improve their communication skills. Because I think it's vital.
But is this the way to go
for
about
the survival of this open development project? That communication is key.
And you don't think that it's misleading at all to show the edge of the map, and then to say that that's the new stuff?
Not the edge of the map. No, that's not the edge of the map. That is directly in smack bang in the middle of the desert. This is a node here. This is in the middle of the desert. I've shown that point before. This is just beyond that point. This is the desert. This is the expansion that they advertised. That part that Steven showed existed in phase 1. I've already covered it. I've got a whole 20-minute video showing that already. That isn't the expansion. This, what I'm showing on my screen right now, is the so-called expansion.
Okay.
Do you understand?
I mean, I'd have to see it for myself and make sure and decide that.
Yep.
I mean, look up the definition of expansion. Yeah, I'm not sure. I do think that, like,
I recommend 2 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Like 2 years.
So you think it's going to be 2 years until the alpha comes out?
I think it. No. What I'm saying is give it 2 years. Like, forget about Ashes, right? Stop thinking about the video game. Let them develop it for 2 years, and then come and check in 2 years to see how they're doing. That's what I recommend.
I just think that it's unfair to expect for an Alpha 2 to have all of the features in it, because I've played a lot of Alphas before, and they've never had that. They've
delivered on their features so far. No, they've delivered their features so far.
Well, you said they didn't deliver the freehold.
They haven't delivered the freeholds yet, but they will do. I didn't say anywhere that they're not going to deliver the features. They will do, but don't get it twisted. It's not going to be in 2 years, boys. It's going to be, I don't know how long, and I can't tell you. Look at Star Citizen is what I'd say. Maybe compare it to that.
Well, we'll see what happens, right? But okay.
Yeah.
So are you going to keep playing the game at all, or like what are you going to do?
I think I'm going to... Well, I have to, right? I'm not going to play it myself, but I've got a whole community who love the game, right? Over the years, I'm sure I'm going to get people posting the progress. So I will keep up with the game's progress through the people that still come to my community and post it, right? I will just casually keep up with the video game and see how they're doing. But ultimately, I just wish, there's no malicious intent towards them. I just don't agree with what they're doing, and I wish them the best.
Okay, that's fair. I'll probably get Steven on, and we'll talk to him after this. Yep. So,
do you want to talk to me after the Steven thing? Or
maybe I don't know. It depends on what he says, right? Yeah, it depends on what he says, and so we'll get on both sides and we'll listen to what Steven's going to say. And I think that's the best idea. But I do really appreciate you talking about this. I definitely do. And and I can see where you're coming from. I think that the communication issues are definitely something I would agree with, right? I mean, for sure, it's hard to like manage expectations. But I also think that the way the games are developed, it kind of makes sense that some things aren't available in alpha that were shown before. Because I just think that's the way that development's worked in games that I've observed over my time playing games.
Wow. I disagree with that statement. I don't think that's true. I think that's Chronicles of Valeria copium. That's what Chronicles of Valeria did. Nobody agreed with that shit. So why are we accepting it with Ashes? Don't we want Ashes to be the one to succeed? We want Ashes to be the Kickstarter that succeeded. So why are we following down the same path and doing the same things that Chronicles of Valeria did? That to me is don't do that.
I'm just saying that's the way that development for a number of games that I've played has been.
Yeah. Not me. I haven't played any games like that because I don't really follow scams until unfortunately recently. That's a meme, by the way. That's a meme.
Okay. All right. Well, I actually, to be honest, I really need to use the bathroom. So I'm gonna call Steven. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I really do.
Yeah.
And best of luck, and I'll be looking forward to the new videos, the Dark Souls one.
Yep.
All
Okay,
right,
mate.
I'll see
Cheers.
ya.